Hello and welcome to Prime Lenses. I'm Ian. Each week I speak with a guest about 3 lenses that have meant something to them on their photographic journey. And this week my guest is Jasper Fforde. Jasper is a writer based in Wales who writes absurdist fiction which I adore. His first book series, starting with The Air Affair, about a detective named Thursday Next, is just genius, and I love those stories. But I recently discovered after 20 years of reading his books that he is also a very keen photographer. Shooting exclusively film, he has a collection of amazing vintage cameras that rivals any collection I have ever come across. This is a fantastic conversation that goes really deep into some fantastic old cameras. I hope you enjoy Jasper Fforde. I was just listening to an interview with Werner Herzog this morning, and he's tremendous.
Oh my God.
And just fascinating person. And especially, I've been interested recently. I think it's because I'm on a run of talking to, people like Joel and being at this Leica thing that I was at a while ago. And you've got people like Ralph Gibson wandering around and stuff like, people who've been making things for a very long time. Evelyn Jen Atwood, people like that. And they get to, as they're in later stage of their lives and thinking about what they're making, and they all seem very clear-eyed on the notion that people just need to do something, right? We just need to be doing things, and ideally for each other. Yeah. And that if you can get to that point, that's actually all that really matters, is that we're the sense of purpose and the moving forwards. And usually that probably most easily comes, I think, from making something with purpose, usually for other people. Whether it's to entertain, whether it's to help, whether, whatever it is. Because if you don't have that, then what are you doing? And this present moment in our lives convinces us through these tiny things that we carry around with us everywhere that actually, you need to be something quite different. Like there's it's likes and follows, and you've got to be this, and you've got to be massive, and it's got to be video, and it's got to be, we're the signal to noise ratio has never been more off, So yeah.
It's never been harder. It's never been easier to do stuff, and it's never been harder to make people see it. You can make movies on your iPhone, and you can edit them on your iPhone. You can upload them to the universe on your iPhone, and no one's really listening because everyone can do it, and you're just like this little lone voice shouting in the darkness. But back in even 25 years ago, or 25 years ago, if you could actually make a movie, that was a major, major deal. And it's like, whoa, okay, this person really has to be, you have to listen to this person because they actually made a film out of film, so it was a lot harder, but people would take notice. So yeah, it's, oh my God, imagine trying to be published now. I have a very good friend of mine, and she's a brilliant, brilliant photographer. And she's worked so hard to try and get noticed, and get paid gigs and actually be a professional photographer. And her work is brilliant. Her work is absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Billy Charity, her name is. And you go, and I'm going, if it's hard for her, it must be hard for a lot of people. Yeah. My delivery driver, my DHL delivery driver, he's a lovely bloke, and we get chatting, and it was like, and he talks about photography now. I said, do you do photography? And he said, I used to be a photographer. And I went, oh, wow. Really? And he said, yeah, it all vanished. All the work vanished, and I deliver parcels.
Wow. Well, related to that, is part of that feeling about the making of something and the kind of the challenge, is that why you still shoot so much film? Or, is it a sort of a conscious choice? Or is it just, that's just kind of what I've always done?
I think it's kind of what I've always done. It's like I kind of knew I was an author before I became an author, because I was always interested in sort of, plays and films and radio comedy, listening to jokes, which are little stories, telling jokes, trying to make movies, which were terrible. And it was only sort of when I actually started to sit down and write a short story that I realized that actually this is what I was meant to do. But it was actually giving myself permission to do so, because I'm dyslexic. So I was diagnosed with stupidity at the age of 9. So writing for me was always something that other people did. And because a big part of my story gathering experience, as you like. Because if you're a novelist, you have to gather it in before you can give it out. It's like filling a well to empty the well, draw on the well, and a lot of that was visual. So a lot of movies, I saw huge amounts of movies, and I always loved taking pictures and photographs. Since about the age of, I don't know, sort of 10 or something, where I had a little box brownie. And there's something still weirdly, I think, hugely attractive of as you've got the film, you've taken your pictures, you kind of know what you've got, but you're not sure. And then you pop them in the dev, and there's this sort of chemical magic, right, that happens. It's not sort of ones and zeros. It's a chemical magic, and something might go wrong or something, and then it's in the fix, and you pull it out. You don't wait to you can't wait to scan it. You have to look at the negs, and that moment when you pull the film out and you just pull it off the reel a little bit before you just give it a wash. That's a very exciting time, and it's a sort of discovery of something of what you've done, and also whether you've brought your skill to bear in a way that you've managed to get it right. Because if you can get it right first time on the neg and you scan it in, say, and you need to do nothing to it, it's like, aced it. And I think you're, as an author, you're kind of looking for the perfect sentence, the perfect paragraph, the perfect story, which you're never going to find. And as a photographer, I think you're looking for that perfect picture, the one that you go, right, that could be, hanging on a wall anywhere, and other photographers would go, yeah, no, that works for me. That's really good. And I think that's that excitement. And you'll find it also, and I mean, I'm not a golfer, but I do know a golfer, and we have these very interesting conversations, and he equates it, and he understands it totally. And I think a lot of people who have pastimes or hobbies will understand it, is when you're playing golf, you're looking for the perfect drive, and you swing and bang, and there's this zzz sound, and it goes dead straight towards the pin, and it lands like 2 foot from it. And you can spend 25, 30, 40, 50 years trying to get that perfect shot. And I think that's the excitement with a lot of creative endeavor, with painters, with sculptors, filmmakers. I'm sure the Coen brothers are still trying to figure out if they, we did pretty well with that, but there's just something else there. And that drive, that energy, that sort of, that furnace, I think what makes really great artists, that always wanting to make things better. So, yes, I mean, that's why, I just still take pictures on film. I love film. I think film is just magical, literally magical. And I tried digital, I went digital for a bit, and for me, it looks plastic. It has a sort of plasticky feel to it, and it felt cheating. And I'm not saying that it's wrong at all. It's a personal, decision. The best pictures ever were taken on very ropey gear, and it doesn't matter. The gear doesn't matter. I mean, that's the important thing. Access matters more than anything. Access, framing, and timing. But it's access. If I had a morning with the Beatles, in 1971 with a box brownie, there would be a volume of photographs called, A Morning with the Beatles, Jasper, Fforde, 1969. And they could be the shittiest pictures imaginable, but they wouldn't. They'd all be brilliant, even the blurry out of focus ones.
Last year I went to see the exhibition of Paul McCartney's photos, because when the Beatles hit it big, Pentax gave them all a camera each. And it was like a K, whatever it was at the time. But top of the range, some really nice, fast lenses. And you go to that exhibition, and he used to carry this camera all over the place with him. And obviously his late wife, Linda, was a accomplished photographer as well, and I'm sure that helped. And at the beginning of the thing, I don't think it's throwing shade to say Macca's not an amazing photographer in 1963. But by 67, which was the course that they all went on, to be honest. I mean, you don't get from She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah to Hey Jude by accident. That's graft. But he seemed to at least apply a similar level of rigor to his photography. And by the end, although some of the portraits are fairly they're not the most striking portrait in the world, but it is, it's Ringo Starr or it's George Harrison or it's John Lennon by a pool or whatever, and they're doing all this stuff. And I think that's the power of those things. As you say, access is a really big part of it. And for me also, it's iteration cycles that again, it's a trap we can fall into of switching gear too many times. Like now I'm using this thing, now I'm using that thing, now I'm using this lens. Whereas, I personally run around basically with this 35 on. And that's what I use all of the time on the one camera, because that's how I'm achieving mastery over it, in theory. That's how I'm getting to that. So I also grin like an idiot because it's lovely when my biases and my personal favourite things come up over and over again, because I'm like, look, that's the point of the thing, is like, we're on a mission to civilize and just try and be like, look, share the thing. But I agree completely that it is about the story that the things tell. The collection of images together, and that can be your own story as much as it has to be photojournalism and or art. It seems like you shoot a lot of medium format.
Yeah, I don't do much 35mm at all. I like a lot of information, a lot of detail. If I could shoot large format all the time, I would. But this gives you an idea. That's
holy moly! Look at that.
Yeah. So, I do sometimes. I take out my smallest large format 5.4 that I can and use that as a kind of take pictures on that. My go-to camera is a Rolleiflex 6x6, kind of Vivian Maier thing. Although she we could talk about her for a long time. She only had a waist level finder. She never had the prism on her camera because her camera was an earlier version. And there's something about a Rolleiflex, especially if it's used in the waist level finder, so you've got it down here and no one knows you're taking a picture, and everything is kind of from waist level, that has a very, very sort of unique look on the world. And the square format I particularly like, and I've been using that for a long time. So mostly, I'm almost sort of 95% 6x6, and the other stuff I do is large format. So I don't really do any 35 at all.
And do you develop at home, mostly black and white?
I process at home because otherwise it's ridiculously expensive. I do very little color. When I do color, I actually do something called trichromes, where you take three black and white pictures, but underneath a red filter, a green filter, and then blue filter, and then you recombine them in Photoshop as 3 color channels, which is great, because things tend to move whilst you're taking the picture. Do it on a tripod. And anything that moves leaves a little chromatic ghost in the complementary color. So in yellow, cyan and magenta. And that's very exciting. And I do like that. And no matter what you take a picture of, it always ends up looking actually really quirky and bizarre and wonderful. Infrared. I love shooting on infrared. During the summer, I usually get myself 10 rolls of infrared, and I'll go and shoot some of those, and they're really lovely. Trees, trees look like a meringue with a black sky behind them, and again, it's like almost everything works as long as you've got a tree, a tree with nothing round it. It's going to work. Trees are great, but they have to be on their own. They can't be in a forest. Very difficult to photograph forests, because forests is 3-dimensional. I do 3-dimensional stereo photography as well.
Oh, well, that's cool. John Lasseter of Pixar apparently had his wedding photos taken on 3D.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, it's great fun. Great fun. Yeah, I do that a bit, but it's harder to view.
Yes.
So I just basically, just shoot on 6.6. And I go out, and quite often I will just take maybe 2 rolls of film with me. And I went up to little town in mid Wales called Llanidloes, and I hadn't been there for a while, and I wanted to go and see some shop fronts and just see what there was, And I went up there, and I had my Hasselblad, and I had my Rolly. I shot 2.5 rolls of film, which is about 30 images. And if I'd taken up the large format, I probably would have shot about 10. And that's actually really, really sharpens up your work. And you look at stuff and you think, is this really a good photograph? And if you don't feel it is, then you just move on and you leave it. And sometimes I'll take a picture or I'll look at something and I'll go, okay, that doesn't work. And then something will change or the light will change, or I'll suddenly realize the sun is in a certain direction. And I'll go, oh, okay, hang on, maybe that would have worked after all. And then I go back and maybe take a picture, maybe not. But it's a great one for focusing. You know, the fact that every image I take costs me about, well, on roll film, it's, what is it now? It's about, I suppose about 70p every image. And if I'm doing 5:4, it's £1.20 perhaps for every photograph. So, you know, I don't have bottomless pockets, and it's more work as well. So it really makes you focus in. I know a lot of digital photographers, they do, and we don't want to diss digital photography here, because there are some amazing pictures being taken. As we said earlier, it's not about the gear. It really isn't. There's some very amazing pictures taken on some pretty ropey stuff, and some really terrible pictures taken on top end cameras. But I think there is sometimes, sometimes a propensity for digital photographers to take a lot of pictures, and then spend hours going through them trying to figure out which is the one they want, and then and fixing things in post. I don't like fixing things in post. I just want to take the picture. That's the world. That's everything, and move on.
It's why I love Polaroid, actually, an instant film. So my film love is Polaroid.
Oh
so
my God.
Do you have any Polaroid cameras?
Oh, do I? I've been, okay, if you know about Polaroid, you know about Polaroid 55? Okay.
Yes.
So, yeah, right. So Polaroid 55 is the best film stock, right, ever in the history of the universe, apart from Kodachrome. Obviously, we can get into that. Polaroid, for anyone who doesn't know, Polaroid 55 is a 5x4 instant photograph. And what's genius about this is that you get a print and you get a negative. And the negative, all the way around the edges of the negative, are the chemical artifacts of the process, if you like, the development process. And those artifacts are the most beautiful, wonderful. It's like you've got a watch and you've opened the watch and you can see it ticking in that beautiful way that watches, that analog watches do. You can see the works, you can see what's going on. And I do actually, so whenever I see a cheap one on eBay, I've got 7 unopened boxes of Polaroid 55, and I've got 150 loose film, and I have a 55 Polaroid 55 sort of week, and I just shoot nothing but Polaroid 55. It doesn't always come out right, so I have this thing where I have to peel. I do them all, I take them right, and then you don't process them, because for anyone at home, what they do is you have it's a little sandwich, and when you pull it out through these rollers, it squishes the reagent across the negative and the positive. Now, they're very old. They were last made in about 2001. So they're very, very old. And the reagent often doesn't work. So there's a possibility you'll get nothing on print or negative. However, if you take all your pictures first and don't put them through the squeegee, don't put them through the rollers, and then you've got like 10 or 15 in the evening, and you get in the darkroom, you pull them through, right, and then you peel them apart in the dark, and you can tell whether they processed or not, right? If they processed, terrific. You can turn the light on and you can do the negative in the usual way. If they haven't processed, if the reagent hasn't worked, right, no problem. You can process the negative yourself. And it's probably one of the finest grain black and white. It doesn't have the artifacts, unfortunately, but you do get a fantastically good negative at the end of it. So it's win-win, even with Polaroid that's out of date. So I love Polaroid. Polaroid is great, and I think I've even got some peel apart somewhere.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've always used this stuff. Yeah, not the peel apart stuff as much. Yeah. I've got on the shelf behind me. There's a peel apart old land camera sitting on the shelf.
I've got one kicking around here. There we go. Well, I use
Love it.
Well, hang on. Oh, back in a sec. So when it comes to land cameras, you probably know this.
Wow.
So that's
I don't know that one.
yeah. This is the one. This is the 110 B, right? So this was,
right.
and
Wow.
it used to run on the roll film. However, with a little sneakiness, you can actually put a 5.4 back on it. So this now becomes a full frame, happy snap, nice and easy to use.
Wow.
Beautiful little
Very
Polaroid
cool.
5.4. And I can also put a back on it, and it'll do the 55s.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love it. I love the kind of the modification culture around some of this stuff is fantastic.
Yeah.
I rescued a 1000 series little, the old SX70 style ones from a charity shop recently, and shoved a pack of film, a used pack but with a working battery. I had enough shots left on the battery. Still works, and that camera must be knocking on the door of 50 years old, and it still works. And I suspect if it weren't for the fact that I had so many other Polaroid 600 cameras kicking around, I don't really need to test. But it even had the little chocolate block flash bar with it.
Oh, hang on, just see if I got my SX70. I've got an SX70 kicking around. The SX70 is probably one of the most optically fantastically designed camera. Because as you know, Polaroid has to come from a proper Polaroid comes from the front. It doesn't come through the back. Ideally, with Instax, it goes through the back. But you have to obviously, it has to be on the front, and then you has to go through a mirror. And the SX70, the folding SX70, remarkable piece of work. It's just extraordinary. Anyway,
for people listening who may not know, it's worth going actually, because Edwin Land was also inspiration a little bit to Steve Jobs back in the day, and so if you go back and watch the film that was released when the SX70 launched, I challenge anyone to watch that and not immediately want to go out and buy one. Like, it's brilliant the way it describes it, and it does a kind of cross-section view showing you the light going in, bouncing off the mirror, and showing how it showed you how it worked, so you could get excited by the kind of the nerdiness of how it worked as well at the time. It's an amazing thing.
SX70, the mirror had to be slightly parabolic to make it all come into focus, to be in such a compact thing. I mean, the interesting thing about Polaroid, and of course where it ultimately sort of failed, is this was a company, and this is where it's very interesting with Apple. This is a company where usually with a big company, especially a tech company, you've got the engineers in one group, and then you've got managers in the other, and it's the power struggle between them. And with Polaroid, it was always in the engineers. So people like Dr. Land were coming up with these, suddenly saying, great, let's do this thing, like let's have instant, Super 8, which failed utterly. Lost like $1 billion because video was coming in and everyone knew it. But it was run by the engineers rather than managerial. And I kind of get the same feeling with Fuji. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Fuji because they make these crazy, crazy, wonderful, beautiful cameras. Sort of handheld 6x9, roll film cameras, 6x17 wide cameras. I mean, just the most amazing. And you get the feeling that the engineers at the Fuji branch are the ones who were kind of calling the shots at the time. And it just creates these wonderful, wonderful cameras that are so niche and so kind of passion led. And you always felt that with Polaroid and Land. He was absolutely passion-led rather than looking at money, rather than sort of finance and how to run a company. And he just came up with this just crazy stuff, and they made a fortune for millions of years, and then suddenly it just died with digital. But Polaroid has been resurrected by the new Polaroid company. But they never went as far as to do instant 5.4 or any 5.4, which I think is a shame.
I have the i2, which is their kind of their flagship one, which a friend of mine, Ben Fratnali, was an early guest, and he does a YouTube channel all about instant photography. And he's just back from China, actually. He's been meeting people who worked on Polaroid, original Polaroid in China back in like the 70s and 80s, and was meeting some of the original people there. And I think he's been filming some stuff, which will be good when that comes out. But they're a different company. Like some of the DNA is there, and some of the kind of the sort of the chutzpah and kind of the desire to make cool things is there. But it is different. Like it has this modern sensibility. Funny thing, when the i2 came out, it overexposed quite badly, and they couldn't really understand why. And it turned out they'd calibrated it. They had a lot of special edition. It was like peach coloured film that they made about 2 years ago or 3 years ago for a limited run. And they had a lot of that kicking around. So they used that as the test film. Polaroid I-type film is 600 speed. It's like 640 ISO. This stuff was 400. Oh. So they calibrated the camera and developed, all the development was done using this 400 speed film without them realizing that they were using 400 speed film, or not correcting it later. And then they launched and everyone was sticking 640 in, and it was overexposing horribly, and everyone was like, this is a $600 Polaroid camera and it doesn't work, what are we doing? It works now through the wonder of software updates, but I can't help but feel that we've overcomplicated the world to an extent that is unhelpful.
Yeah. I mean, I prefer the Instax. I mean, even though, I like the little Diddy square in Instax. I kind of prefer. I think Fuji have got that's the one. So I think, and they do a square one as well, which is quite nice, a little Diddy square one. And I think Fuji, with their Instax, have got a better handle on color and fixing and everything else than Polaroid. Yeah. And I used the Polaroid. They did a 10.8, which was quite nice. 10.8. Film stock, instant film stock, and it wasn't a tremendous. It was nothing like the Polaroid. I did actually have half a box of 10.8 Polaroids, which I used, which were actually pretty good. Which were pretty good on some friends of mine just doing portraits, and it was like that sort of funny, last roll of Kodachrome feel about it, But Polaroid, I adore Polaroids. They're just wonderful, wonderful things. But yeah, the 55, oh my God, there's a book. I can't remember who the photographer is. What he did is he set up a photo booth in Red Square in Moscow. And this was like way back. This was like sort of 76 or something, 78. And he set up a photo booth. And after a lot of negotiating, because he was American, and it was with Polaroid 55. And what he did is he said, okay, this is the booth. Right, this is the bulb that will fire the shutter, right? You go into the tent. I won't be there, right? So you can then pose yourselves and you press the bulb and you take the picture and I will give you the picture. And he did this for a month or whatever. And he gave them the picture and everyone was really happy. And it was very private moments, but it was on 55. So he had the negatives. And he made this into a book, and it's just the most wonderful, wonderful, because everyone is so genuine in it, and there's no photographer there photographing themselves, and that's one of the joys of 55. But I can't remember the name of the photographer, but it was really good book.
It would be remiss of us.
Yes,
I'm enjoying myself far too much. Which of your three lenses would you want to kind of bring up first? You sort of swithered on one of them, so the 47's out.
Yeah,
you've got a couple of wide.
Well, I've got a couple of wides. I mean, the one that I know this is audio only, so I'll sort of have to describe it. Yeah. This is something called the Hasselblad. It's a Hasselblad. It's a Zeiss lens. It's called a Biogon, which is basically a trade name. Or a kind of way in which you can structure lens, and they call it Biogon, planar, and sonar, and all these sort of different things. And Tessar, which is more simple one, and it's a Biogon, and it's a 38 millimeter lens. Now, on 35 mil full frame, that's probably about a 24, between a 24 and a 28, but it's square, so you have the height as well as the width, so it looks a lot wider. It's very wide for 6.6, which don't generally have massively wide lenses because of usually you have a problem with the mirror box behind them. So that the Hasselblad really only goes to a 40 if you've got a reflex camera. The Biogon was apparently made as a aerial photography military lens, and because of that, they said to Zeiss, I don't know who, Swedish military, or was it? I can't remember what it was. They said to Zeiss, look, money, no object. We want a flat field lens that works perfectly wide open, no distortion, and just do what you can. And they came up with this fantastic lens. Hasselblad got hold of it and they said, "Ooh, can we, license this from Zeiss to actually make it into a camera?" And the answer was obviously yes. So they built this rather quirky, interesting little camera that is not reflex, and it just sits there with a very small body, very large lens on the front, and then a Hasselblad back. It's small. It weighs a couple of pounds, 2.5 pounds perhaps, but it is the most fantastically good quality. You do have to keep it, if you're doing architecture or something like that, or anything that has straight lines, you do have to vaguely keep it level. But as a little sort of grab camera, I mean, I took it I was going through Paddington and had a little moment to spare. So I just got it out. I set it to, I think, a 15th of a second or an eighth of a second, put it on a bollard, held it down tight, and took a picture as the crowds were running past, not looking through, no nothing. Wide lens, and it just looks terrific. It's a great little camera. I have, I think, the Mark II version, so it's the lens which is uncoated, so it does get a little bit flary. And I always say to myself, I'm going to update it, and I just love it so much. I've still got it. It's about 10 years on, but it's just the quality, and there's a quality of lenses that you get where you haven't had to make them. And you'll know this for your little ZM. The perfect lens, of course, is not one that's reflex, because when you've got reflex, then you've got the mirror box, and you have to have this back very long rear focal length to clear the mirror. But when you're doing lenses for rangefinders, then there is no such compromise, and that's why a lot of large format lenses of fantastic quality, and this Hasselblad lens, the Bargon 38mm, is just fabulous quality. And the camera the lens is wonderful. It has a little self timer on it. It has a little thing that tells you how much depth of field you got, little automatic thing, which is ever so nice. And it's just a lovely little thing to use. Just an absolute delight. A little sort of pocket rocket wide angle lens.
Nice little winder on the side as well, little crank.
It's
always lovely.
Yeah, it all clinks and cranks and makes clockworky noises when you work with it. And it's unobtrusive. You can take super wide angle. I mean, one I do. I've been doing a series for a while, which are barber shops at night, right? So there's no one in them. And the thing about this is it's so wide, you can actually press it against the glass of a shop window. And if there's something interesting inside, obviously not people. Well, you could do it with people if you don't mind being. I'm more surreptitious than that. I really don't like people. I feel, I don't know. Why are you taking a picture of me? I always get that worry, which I think is stupid. I shouldn't. And I used to be a lot more sort of robust in taking, pictures of people in the old days. Less so these days. I don't know why. I think it's probably. I don't think one should take pictures of people without their permission, or assume that it is my right to photograph someone. So I think maybe that's come with sort of older age. But anyway, you can press it onto the glass. Of course, don't need a tripod. And you can take a picture of, anything, interesting shop displays, abandoned shops, shops which are partially. I took one the other day there were about 9 mannequins in various states of dismemberment, scattered around a shop that was just being rebuilt into a clothes shop, and it was an interesting photograph, I must say. And you can do that with the SWC. You just press it on the glass, and of course you can do a second exposure. Doesn't matter. Also, it focuses down, all the way down to a foot.
Wow. Okay. I don't get that one on a rangefinder.
I know. Isn't that great?
Yeah. 1 meter, 70 centimeters, something like that.
What can you do? What can you do?
Well, you can stick a 90 on and stand back.
Yeah,
is what you can do.
I guess so. There are some. I mean, if you, Leica, I think was it Leica? I know I've got a Mamiya 6, which is a lovely camera, and you get a set of 3 lenses with it, and there's a very nice wide, 50mm wide, which is a sort of Distagon type lens, and they do a little thing that clicks on the front, which allows you to have a rangefinder, but go into, it basically puts a 1 diopter on it, so you can go to about 2'6". But it's not good for close-ups because it's 75mm, and you need a 150 for a portrait minimum. So there are ways around it, but they're never perfect. Every camera it's trying to find the perfect camera that does everything for all people, and it's almost impossible.
Digital's got fairly close, and I feel like it tricks us into, because I think the compromises that you have to make, or the constraints, are where the interesting stuff comes from. I was talking to someone the other day about, it was Pete Souza was on talking about making a photo book when he tried to make a photo book after the Obama presidency. The first version of the book that they showed the publisher was something like 500 pages. And they knew they weren't going to get away with it, but that was, he just in fair play to him, he distilled 1.9 million images down to 500 pages, which I think is quite an achievement personally.
Wow.
But he still had more to go. I think in the end it was like 350 or something. It's a negotiation. But constraints are where the good stuff comes from. If you turn in a manuscript to your publisher that's like 1,500 pages, they'll be like, "Whoa, hang on a minute."
Steady.
Exactly. Let's don't bore us. Get to the chorus. So no, I think it's good to kind of like know that you can't shoot something. Make your peace with that. I've taken my rangefinder to the MotoGP, for example, and all I had was a 90.
Yeah.
And then you go, well, good. I'm not here for work. I should be here to enjoy myself.
I hate. I mean, one of the things that as I get older, one of the things I hate most is actually changing lenses. All that sort of hang on, hold this, and do that, and all that kind of stuff. And it's so my standard bag, I would have the SWC, the wide angle Hasselblad, and my Rolleiflex, which is a 75. It's just like a standard lens. It's slightly wider than standard. It's about a 40 wide, but 40 high as well, being square. And it's so much more enjoyable. And you just go, I've just got a 75 and I've got a 38, and that's it. And sometimes I keep the Tele Rolleiflex, which has got a 135mm lens in it, and that's usually in a separate bag in the car. And I just go, well, if I need it, I'll come back and get it. But I'll just stick with the two cameras and see what happens.
Yes.
And for the most part, you don't really miss anything, to be honest.
No, I travelled recently without my camera by accident. That was a painful experience.
Oh my God.
Flipping hated that. That was, and you get to the airport with your car, and I'd obviously realised whilst I was driving and sobbed uncontrollably, and so you're taking out the spare lens that you probably wouldn't have used anyway, and you put all the stuff in your bag. And then, do you ever do that when you're traveling for things, and you get up the next day and you look at the bag that you packed for yourself the day before, and you're like, what on earth was I thinking, packing like a 28, a 35, a 50 and a 90? Like, just what? I'm going to Devon for the weekend. Like, what?
Exactly.
What was I expecting to happen?
Yeah. I mean, quite often, when I travel, I like to travel light. And if I'm only going away for 3 or 4 days, it's like, do I really want to lug all this gear? It's just the Rolleiflex, and that's it. Yeah. And I have a wide angle adapter, but that's usually in the bag, and I don't usually use that very much. And because it's a super lightweight camera, it's a real tiny little camera. Once all the accessories are off, you don't use a prism or anything, and you can just carry it around all day. But a bag full of lenses, and really, if the lens is always at home, there's actually no point in having it. And I always feel that one day I'm just gonna. I love the gear though. I really love the technical and optical aspect of photography, but really, there's only a few cameras I use all the time, and you just get weighed down, and then that slows you down. And it's like changing lenses; it slows you down. Unless I'm doing the sort of photography where I'm going out with large format, and I've got a tripod, and I'm doing that sort of work. Then it's like, you can carry as many lenses as you want, as long as you can back the car up to where you're, taking a photograph.
The old adage about 50 yards from the car, more than that is by definition not photogenic.
No. I mean, what's it? I can't remember who said a wonderful quote. I can't remember who said it now. It'll come to me in a moment. Is that large format photography is more about furniture removals than and especially you start using lights. I like using flash, but not electronic flash. I use flash bulbs, right? So again, and I've sort of got draw loads of them, and that's great fun. But you have to carry a lot around with you.
Well, from a Biogon then, but I'm tempted to make a joke about Biogon age, but I won't.
Biogon age.
One of the other ones is a Zeiss, a 135, but presumably again on a larger format. It's not really 135.
Well, it's. I mean, in
its field of view.
There it is. Well, no one can see it. This is. So this is on a Rolleiflex. So this is a Rolleiflex for anyone who doesn't know too much about Rolleiflexes. In the days before or I should say, the days between, SLRs were there in the early days, and then they went out, and then they came back again. But in the time they were out, there was something called a twin lens reflex. So I had two lenses, one at the top, one at the bottom, and the top one was a viewing lens, which went onto a ground glass that you look down upon. And the bottom one was the taking lens. The great advantage of this, and we were talking earlier about the compromise of lens design because of the mirror box. The wonderful thing about the Rolleiflex is, although the parallax is slightly off, there's no compromise, or very little compromise, to the taking lens, because it's a reflex camera, but there's no reflex, there's no mirror. So you can look straight down and you can actually see what you're photographing as you photograph it, which is one of the unique things about a twin lens reflex. Rolleiflex, who were the market leaders in these, they did basically their one model, which had a 75mm lens, but they could see that single lens were coming in. Hasselblad were obviously, saying, right, we can do this now. We've got the optical know-how to be able to make wide-angle lenses with a mirror box on the front. So Rolleiflex came up with a tele wide, which was essentially a Rolleiflex with a 55mm wide-angle lens in it. Again, Zeiss. They always generally use Zeiss or Schneider Rolleiflex. And they also did something called a Rolli Tele, which was essentially a Rolleiflex camera, but with a 135mm lens on it. And it's unusual in that it's the only Zeiss one which was what's called a sonar, which we were talking about Discon earlier, and there's a planar and sonar and Tele-Tessers. It's the only planar Zeiss 135. It is an exceptionally good lens. I mean, just the most extraordinary lens. Frank and Heydrich, was it? I can't remember. F&H, we'll call them F&H, who made Rolleiflex, never, ever skimped on mechanical or optical design, ever. It was really, really high quality, and still is. These cameras are still up there. So when they came to make the Tele Rolli, they made basically a camera that can take portraits. It's like, this is a portrait camera. And it has a few downsides in that the lens doesn't rack out enough, because it's got the same level of rack as the 75mm. And of course, if you know your kind of lenses, it won't focus as close. So it only focuses to about 8 feet. So you have to put on a little series of diopters, a 0.3 and then a 0.7 diopter. And they rather neatly swing out over the front of the lens. So you can have them on, and then you just pop them off and you've got slightly closer. And if you want to get closer still, then you put on the 0.7 diopter. I love this design of lens. It's a 135, probably 150 might be a better lens for distance-wise for taking a portrait. They always say double standard lens, so maybe a 150 or even a 200 would be a better portrait lens. But for portability and everything else, it's just the sharpest lens you can imagine, and takes all the Rolleiflex accessories. So it fits my usual go-to Rolleiflex, which has the 75 on it. But it's just a most beautiful little design. And if I'm doing things like, if I'm going to a car show, perhaps, or an aeroplane show, or there's a hunt meet every Boxing Day here near where I live. If I'm going to one of those and it's people watching, or it's vehicles, because vehicles I always think are tremendously uninteresting if you photograph them their entirety, unless you're going back on a very long lens. So I always do details. I love details of steam engines, details of aeroplanes, air intakes, that kind of little grills, that kind of stuff. I always take the Tele Rolli, because I can just get nice and tight and blow the background, shoot it wide open. I tend to shoot wide open always. Whenever I can, just to blow the background a bit and just focus in literally on the subject. But I love my little Tele Rolli, and they're so cheap at the the because no one wants them.
Oh, don't say things like that. Hosting a podcast is extremely expensive.
Oh, sorry. It is extremely expensive cameras.
Yeah, and you'd hate it, Ian. You'd have a terrible time with the thing.
Yeah, you'll hate it. No, it's lovely. And sometimes if I go on a job for like 2 or 3 days, and I usually, as I said, I usually take the Rolleiflex. Occasionally I go, oh, to hell with it. I'll take the Hasselblad, the wide angle, 38 mil. And then sometimes I go, oh, to hell with it. I'll take the Tele Tessa, and I'll spend the next 3 days taking pictures on a 135. And you'd be surprised how easy it is, and how you suddenly go, okay, well, I'm going to just need a little bit more, distance. But there's lots of stuff I can do. And the Tele, the Rolly Tele is terrific for taking little sort of candid portrait shots, or whatever. And I know I said earlier about, people's permission and everything, but if I take people, sort of picking their nose on a park bench, that's not the ones I ever put on social media. Those. Sure. Unless you know the people, I always think it's, I don't know. I mean, there's lots of arguments about this, and I don't know really where I stand, but I feel uneasy over it, so I tend to avoid it unless it's fabulous, and I know that the people in it would not. There was this couple. I was in Central Park in New York, and there is, if you've been there, or people who've been there, or people in New York who are listening to this podcast, you'll know that there's this wonderful little sort of curved bandstand about halfway down that main drag, and people can get up there and they can dance and they can do their thing and everything. And this couple were up there and they were dancing, and the lady was quite svelte, and the man was perhaps no stranger to Greg's. And they had a little boombox that they'd put on the ground, and they were dancing as though they were the only couple on the planet. And I took a picture of them, and it's one of my favorite pictures I think I've taken. And I did post that. I think it's probably on my Instagram feed years back. And I thought, I think you would like this. I think, you would not mind yourselves being photographed in this way. So I felt very happy to put that one out. It's an odd feeling. It's like many things in life, if you feel uneasy about doing something, there's probably a very good reason.
Yes.
Should I?
Yeah, definitely.
Should I say that to this person? And you go, I don't think you should. You just go, no, it's don't say it. A good rule of thumb is if you can't think of anything nice to say, just shut up. And I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb, to be honest.
I heard something the other day that I really liked, which I'd not heard before, which was do everything as if your son is watching. Which, if you're a parent, is a good kind of rule of thumb as well. Again, because if I'm, it's easy to be disparaging about things or people, or talk about things in a way. And so actually, most things we encounter that annoy us or that we don't think are good enough or whatever, it's at the root of it is someone who's trying their best, right? He's trying, and so it's very easy. I think we especially love it in Britain. We're like, oh well, that didn't work. Oh, what is right? And it actually was a bunch of folks were trying super hard, and almost certainly did not have enough resources to do it properly. And those resources might not be financial. It might be experiential. It might be whatever it is that they didn't know they didn't know. And so they didn't mean for it to go this wrong. It's just gone wrong, and that's just the way it is. And so I try and, with two kids, because my two are 7 and 11, so they're at an age where their brains are little sponges and they're taking stuff in, and I am always wary that the way we act rubs off on people. And when we've all encountered people for whom the world just always seems to present them with tons of unreasonable challenges, and Jimmy Carr has this great line, which I'll have to bleep part of, but he's like, if it's midday and you've just encountered your fifth, maybe you're that, and that's the thing you can. And I think maybe there's stuff to that. It doesn't mean you're irredeemable, but you might have you just might be sending the wrong energy out, and that precedes you, and then you'll be the recipient of whatever that is. Whereas if you sort of smile at everyone and go, "How are you?" Just take a minute. And I think modern life isn't built for that. And I think what's wonderful about your practice, it sounds like, is that you've got things that you're familiar with that you love using that will give you a result that you like and that you can use to make the images you enjoy. And I think too much of the world and too much of conversation around photography is telling us that we need to be semi-pro all the time and using the greatest thing that was made yesterday. And if you haven't got, the Venn diagram overlap of people who tell you gear doesn't matter, but then also regularly shoot with a camera that costs like £2,000. It's just it's just too close.
Absolutely. 2 points there. what you're saying about, where don't do anything your son is watching. The only piece of I think reasonable advice that I have ever come up with was basically be the person that you want your children to become, which is pretty much what you said, actually. And that's really hard, because if your children are going to end up like us, that's kind of what happens. And if you want your children to be generous and charming and delightful, you're going to have to be genuine and charming and delightful. But you can't pretend to be genuine, charming, delightful, because then your children will will turn out to pretend to be charming and delightful. Now, I'm not saying that this is something I managed to do, because I have massive flaws in myself. But I think it's kind of good advice. I mean, the second thing that you said, which is very interesting about, spending money on lots of gear. I was talking to someone about, and they were saying, look, I want to get this lens, and it's like really, really good. And I was listening, and I said, well, it sounds really, really good. But if it's going to cost 700 quid, I would suggest you could probably get to, you could spend a week in Prague for that and take your 50 mil and like 10 rolls of HP5. And I'd say, do you know what? Because it's not the gear, and we've said this many times, it's not the gear, it's what you put in front of the gear. So if you've got 400 to blow on a lens, I'd say, look, if you could possibly get to Namibia on that, well, you wouldn't be able to. But if you can get, if you can get to sort of Windhoek, or something on a grand with your camera, and you take your 50 mil and just go amongst the dunes there and take some pictures, it's like you're going to have something really, really good. So you've got to put a lid on it. But some people are into the camera gear for the gear, and I totally get that too. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. If you like the gear, you like the gear. That's kind of your hobby. But if you want to take pictures, that's your hobby. And you often find out people who just love to take really good pictures. You often find they have very little gear, and they just spend it on weekends in Chester, something like that. Another beautiful town.
My mate Sarah Lee, who takes a lot of photos, she does portraits and stuff for The Guardian. I've been out on a couple of walks with her, and she'll just like grab her camera out of her bag, and she does it for reels, and she's very good. But sometimes her camera is in her bag if she's just mooching about, and it's wrapped up in like a woolly hat. Yeah, and it's just because then it doesn't look like she's got a camera bag, and and then she can just grab it, use it, put it back, and she's like there is a disconnect, isn't there, between what we imagine, being a photographer is sometimes, and what actually being a creative person in the world is. And it's like, I like to say that everything's connected. Like actually, there's not that much difference between someone who is a practicing artist and trying to be a really good artist, and sort of like a Michael Jordan or some great athlete. It's like actually, it's about time spent on iteration cycles running through. Like right, do that. Okay, let's do that again. It's the Mr. Miyagi thing, like actually that's the thing. And if you can develop a practice around doing the thing more, then go out and actually do the thing more, like you're saying, get on a plane or but just it's why I always have my camera on my neck when I walk to school with the boys in the morning, because I live in the woods, and it's always there's often something. And I fair play, I do often take the same photos over and over again, but like you were saying earlier, one day it will be the one photo. It will be the version that's been in my head the whole time. Yeah, I mean, I too plasticky. Yeah, I mean, I have favourite oak trees that I like to photograph, and I've taken lots and lots of photographs of the same tree in varying different lights. I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, to go to sort of back to basics. It's like if you've ever spoken. I mean, you have obviously. To a pure photographer, someone who, and by pure photographer, I mean someone like sort of Martin Parr or Ansel Adams, is they don't do anything else, right? That is all they are, and success came to them because this is all they did. And they became, fantastictically good at it. And they're very interesting to talk to. The other one I really like is, was McCurry, Steve McCurry. He did Afghan Girl, again, pure photographer, and you go and listen to them. There's the war photographers, they're all coming to mind now, and these aren't people who had another job and did a bit of photographing, or were very much into
into being a photographer rather than actually doing photography, because I think there's a lot of people who like being a photographer. Oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm a photographer. It's like that's being a photographer, and then there's actually doing photography. And these guys did photography, and I obviously should have to add women to that list as well. Vivian Mayer was not a pure photographer, and that's what makes her photography so much better. But as a pure photographer is the Margaret Bourke-White, who did the amazing photographs of the migrant woman. Was that Margaret? Oh God, I got it right.
I think that's right.
Oh my God, how I got it right. I need to do my homework better, don't I? That's terrible to only list male photographers. Anyway, but when you go and listen to these pure photographers, and they have a completely different way of doing things. Ansel Adams would set up his camera on the top of his car because he didn't want to be annoyed and he wanted to get a little bit higher, and then he'd stay there for hours and hours and hours, and he'd take a picture and then he'd look at it and he'd go, I wonder what that cloud's going to do. And he'd just sit down and he'd just watch. And then he'd go into the darkroom and he'd be doing contact prints of 10:8. He'd shoot on 10:8 and then contact print them. And we're going, why would you just shoot on 4:5 and then enlarge it? No one would ever know. And it's because he's this photographer. And there's something definitely to be learned from those people who are only photographers. That sense of always have a camera, never go without.
Yes.
And I often have the other one. I always, rather stupidly, I don't know, but you might do this as well. You always leave one unexposed. You are a film. Your film on your.
So I'm both. I'm mostly digital, and I do shoot a little bit of 35 now. Yeah. But my go-to film is actually Polaroid, typically, because I'm fundamentally impatient, and it does a lot of the work for you. I grew up around it, it's. I think sometimes it's the first thing you're exposed to as well. Yeah, is like that's photography,
Yeah, sure. No, on film photography and this is something that a lot of film photographers do. And when you speak with other people who are very intensely film, and I can be very intensely film and photography. I mean, and then you really only want to talk to other photographers like that. Otherwise, it comes over as like really boring. Is we always leave one for the Yeti on the end of the roll. And that's kind of really important because you'll be in a lovely forest and it's a low sun and everything's looking tremendous, and you're photographing a beautiful the bark of a tree with the backlight behind, and everything's wonderful in the world, and you could take lots of pictures. You always leave one on the roll because on the way back the Yeti could be there, and you'll have nothing. And there's no time to reload or anything. And you quite often find photographers will leave one on the roll just in case on the walk back to the car. Yeah. And of course, you don't use that picture. So when you want to process the film, you just take a picture of anything. And I've got pictures of anything, which are actually quite interesting because they're just blurry, out of focus, out of exposure shots, usually of my office or the door out the window or whatever, and they're the Yeti shots that don't have a Yeti in them. And it's that sort of interest that I think you get from film photography that quite often you don't get from digital. And the beautiful accidents that we have in film as well, some flare or a fog, especially with colour.
I will use that as an opportunity for a callback for a previous episode, which next time you're traveling, I encourage you. I know a good podcast you can listen to.
Yeah, okay.
It was about 20 episodes ago now, but it was there's a book called End of the Roll, and it's photographs by a woman from Yorkshire called Alice Longstaff, and it is a collection of photos that she was a working photographer all of her life. And obviously had the end of the roll moments. You get a job, you go and shoot a wedding, you do whatever. And then there's this collection of photos. And basically where she was from, this local community have got her archive and are just working through it. And I spoke on the show to the guy who's kind of going through the archive and scanning them and finding them. But most of the photos and the negatives, she would develop them, clean off the negatives, and then put them in an envelope labelled. And then no one's touched them since. And they're a bit like the Vivian Mayer stuff. They're tremendous photos. So they've got a little folk museum there that they're kind of maintaining. They've done an exhibition recently. They've restored her camera and got the chair that she used to have in her studio. So you could have gone, if you were there this summer, could have gone and had your photo taken with the thing. But they're a lovely bunch, and I'll put links in the show notes. But yeah, tremendous stuff from the end of a roll, like a whole book of really great photos of a moment in time. And it's like, who were these people? What were they doing? Like some of them they're acting up, and it was all just so she could finish the role and then develop it and then go and do that thing. And the closest we have with digital is the thing that I've tried to train myself to do, because exactly that Yeti moment that you're talking about happens to me every time I put the camera back in the bag. I'll be walking back to the car, or it's the end of the walk, and I've taken a bunch of photos, and that is the moment that I will put the camera in the bag, and I'll be thinking to myself as I do it, something's going to happen. And I've missed shots that were interesting, either family doing stuff or just something interesting, or the light, it's passing through and it goes so quick, and you've just got to be ready to go in that moment. And that's a good kind of, I think missing those moments is sometimes good for us, because you need the kind of painful nostalgic feeling of, that could have been in your head, that could have been the greatest shot ever, like that was the one, right? And you missed it. And I'm doing a set of skies at the moment, and it's the sunsets I've missed, all the sunrises that I've missed, that I'm like, if I'd just noticed and looked up, that would have been, the thing. So I think it's as valid for everyone as it is, until you're driving and can't. Although yesterday I was taking the kids to a thing, and I pulled over at the side of the road because I spotted a photo in the rearview mirror, and I did pull over, hazards on, get the camera out the boot, get the photo, confuse everyone. And the kids are just in the car going, what's going on? Like, Dad's just had enough. It's just hazards blinking in the fog.
Yeah, and you just,
but anyway,
saw it happening. Yeah, I mean that's so the thing is that it's not having the camera in the bag; it's having the camera around your neck. Yes. And you look at Pa, and he's never without a camera, and it's around his neck because he'll see something. Yes. He'll see a tie knot that he finds particularly amusing, and he has no problem with just walking straight up to someone with literally a sort of the kind of lens that you use to take sort of dental pictures, and take a picture of their tie knot, or your ear. It's like, what a genius.
Oh, certainly I'm in danger of enjoying myself far too much, but there is your last lens.
Oh, my last lens
is tremendous, because I had no idea this thing existed, and it looks dreamlike. What an incredible lens.
Yeah, so this is the Aero Ektar. This Aero Ektar. It's a 178 millimeter lens, f2.5. Now, it's a fast lens. I mean, well, not in 35mm format, because you guys can use 0.95s and 1, but this is a f2.5, 178mm, but it covers large format. So it's like using a kind of 56mm, which has a equivalent stop of about 0.5 or below. So this is something that has no depth of field. Sheet of paper. That's literally it. That is your depth of field, and the where it goes out of focus, where it blows out, it goes very, very weird, very, very quickly. So it's an extraordinary looking lens, and it's the kind of lens. It's like you look at a picture and you instantly know what lens it was taken on. And the Aero Ektar has a very specific look, which is just unbelievably perfect. And you can take portrait pictures head to foot of someone, and the background is completely blown out. So even if you go back, like 10 or 12 foot, you still get this amazing, narrow depth of field. It was actually designed as an aerial photography camera in the Second World War. And it was, so I think it also goes up to about, it's not just 5.4, I think it's about 6x6 or 6x9 inches this is. So it's got a bit of movement as well, which is one of the joys of large format. But it's a big, heavy old beast. It has lanthanum, apparently glass in it, I think, which is very, very slightly radioactive. So they tend to go brown with age as the radioactivity sort of browns them. It's not meant to be dangerously radioactive, but they are apparently a little bit radioactive. To make all the glass work, because as you know, with optics, you have various different glasses with different refractive indexes to make all those lovely, wonderful, perfect light rays meet at the right place. So it was a technical achievement by Kodak, and they became very, very cheap after the war, and people used to just tear them out of these cameras, and then they became really ridiculously expensive, and now they're kind of cheap again. But you have to use it on a large format camera. Obviously, I know people have used them on the 6.7 Pentax, but it has no shutter in it. So whatever camera you put it on has to have a shutter within it. So it has to have a focal plane shutter. So I put it on a Graflex press camera, quite an old Graflex press camera from about 1949, which has a focal plane shutter, so I can actually use it. But you can do the old shutter with a hat or a lens cap, and we all know 15th of a second is dink dink. That's about 15th. And if you're using FP4, you probably get away with it. So don't worry too much about technical things. Just have a bit of fun. But every now and again, it's kind of thing you have to use on a tripod. And I go out, and anything you pointed at is going to look weird and wonderful and dreamy and odd in the way that the out of focusness happens. So it's just a delight. But it does weigh about £5, like two kilos. And that's just the lens.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a beast, and it flares really badly. So I had a flower pot on the front, plastic flower pot on the front of it, with the bottom cut on and taped on the front. Really narrow lens hood. But then I found that someone actually did 3D printed ones, so that was quite nice. So I got one of those now. But it's just a fabulous lens, and weirdly, it does cover 10.8 if you're within about 2'6", 3 foot of someone. So you can actually do a wide angle close up. And if you're shooting on 10.8, it's it would be equivalent of, that's about a 25, say a 28 or 25 on 10.8 width. But again, it would be a 0.5. So if you can imagine taking a portrait of someone on a 25mm f.5 lens, that's what you'll get with the Aero Ektar on a 10x8 camera.
Wild.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Wild is exactly the word for it. And because it's such a beast, nobody tends to use it very much. So I often, have a week or something, or a couple of days where I just shoot on the Aero Ektar and have a lot of fun with it, I must say. And it's because it's f2.5, really easy to focus and see what you're doing. Super bright, and large format are not known for their bright ground glasses, it has to be said. So to have that is actually quite nice.
It's a really, really cool one. It's worth looking up. I've been watching recently the behind-the-scenes stuff from the Oasis tour that's been happening.
Yeah.
And the behind-the-scenes photographers and videographers who've been doing that used, one of the lenses they've used is this weird Lomo lens, which is kind of, in style, it's aping a little bit these really peculiar vintage lenses. And the bokeh swirls. So in the background, when there's like a load of lights behind, like I think it was Liam Gallagher, I saw all the lights and people like holding up lights and stuff like that. They just swirled like a star pattern, like a long exposure just around in the background, but in video. It's very trippy to look at because the separation is such that he appears to be in focus, and then the background is just this swirling mass of odd visual effects almost. Like, it's very unusual to look at. So this lens kind of has that kind of, whoa, what is that? So I love that you chose that. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's a great one to have a look at, I must say.
Jasper, thank you so much for doing this. This was tremendous fun. And I love how in-depth and you found some lenses we've definitely never had.
Well, listen,
right?
we must talk again because, one of the project I'm working on at the moment is because we didn't get onto Polaroid. When you talk Polaroid, ultimately you have to talk about the 20 by 24, and that's inches, right?
Yes.
This is another conversation entirely. If ever I had my life again, I would have paid. That is no longer happening. They no longer have the chemicals or the paper to do it. So that is finished, like Kodachrome and all these wonderful things. But I thought, I'm going to have to make myself a 20 by 24 camera. So that is currently the project. And I'm actually at the moment I'm making the film carrier and ground glass, and that's great fun because even a semi-wide on that is 600mm. I have a standard lens on it is 8 or 900mm, and then you've got to have to do a portrait, because the wonderful thing about portraits is like over life size, because I want to do over life size Head and Shoulders, right? And that's a very tall order, and even on a 600mm, you need a draw of, you're getting onto like sort of 1.4 meters of bellows. So there's a lot of technical sort of things to worry about. But we should talk again in a year or so, and I can talk challenges of a 20 by 24. It's big old heavy beast, but it's getting there. It's getting there, and I want to be able to shoot either the black and white reversal print Ilford do, or wet plate collodion, which is another way, big tin types, wet plate collodions, or glass. So that's a project that's going on at the moment. But I'm always sort of building cameras and doing stuff. So, another another time perhaps.
Oh, amazing! Yes, I'd love to. Please do keep me in the loop on that. And because presumably you'll be like that Edwin Land, the famous picture of Land with the big.
Yeah, I mean there was they call it what do they call the instant black and white? I can't remember now. It's very, very contrasty, but you can pre-flash it. I can't remember what it's called now, but they do basically a reversal black and white, and you process it in normal, and it comes out as a positive. I mean, they don't do it on a roll. I had this idea that you just sort of pull it down as a roll and then tear it off and process it. I have this kind of idea you do that, but I'm not sure I can do that. But I'm just thinking aloud, if it would be quite a good episode if I can get it all working and running, is actually to get you down here in the studio, because I have a studio next to my office, and actually photograph you on it. And that would then be would that be quite a good little podcast?
Yes, it would be great to have the audio, because this is one of the things about going places is having recording audio of going somewhere. Like, so when I did the Joel episode, because it was in London and it was on location, instead of opening with like the standard music and the sting and the stuff that I do, I had audio from Victoria Station it was, because there was someone singing, because I was talking to them about a documentary they were in about their relationship, and as I got to the train station there was a woman busking singing "My Baby Just Cares for Me," whatever that, I can't remember the song, the name of the song, but it's great. Yes, Nina Simone. And so the episode opens because it's about relationships and push and pull of relationships and how they're navigating it in their later life. It seemed like the perfect opening and stuff. So it's the old World Service radio nerd in me, is that I grew up loving radio. So stuff like that, and the sounds of things clanking and doing whatever. It's yes, I'd love to do that. That'd be brilliant.
That'd be good fun, because wet plate collodion is another. Yeah, I mean, it's just a wonderful. Talk about chemical artifacts. Yeah. It's just the most beautiful process. But maybe we'll get to talk about that in another time. Yeah, 20 by 24 wet plate collodion. That would be quite something, wouldn't it?
That will be amazing. I can't wait to see. You need to do an exhibition of this stuff.
Yeah, I spend most of my time writing. I was writing before you called, and I'll be writing afterwards. I'm trying to finish a book. So I seem to spend way too much time writing. I was hoping I'd be a really, really successful author by now, and could be just bring out a book every 3 or 4 years, and everyone would go to the top of bestseller list and sell big time. It didn't happen. You're going right back to what we said at the beginning. If you get it, you really get it. And I think I'm writing for a very small group of people who are very, very loyal and very generous and very wonderful and fantastic. But it's not a massive group of people, or as big as we'd hoped. But I stick with it, because otherwise I'd be writing something that is not me. So I just stick with my silly nonsense, and just it's for the people who want my silly nonsense.
Yep. Same, preaching to the choir. Yep. We will be two people making things for a very specific audience.
Excellent. Don't write to market. Don't photograph to market. You just do your stuff. This has been really good. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah. Oh, pleasure, mate. Yeah. Pleasure. Yeah. You have a tremendous rest of day. I hope you find all the words.
Yes. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I think I've got some Martians attacking someone. So Martians, yay! Proper Martians, War of the World Martians, with heat rays,
yes,
fighting machines.
Oh, good.
Clanking away, that kind of stuff. Yeah, and it's public domain, so I can do what I want. It's good.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, good. All right. Yeah, good to chat. And keep in touch. And we should do the 20 by 24, because it's a good old beast of a thing. It's huge. You can barely lift it. So I was thinking of putting it on an Austin 7 chassis to wheel it around, just for a bit of fun.
That does sound perfect.
It would be perfect, wouldn't it? Yeah,
yeah.
Good.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, mate.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. No, cheers.
Take care.
Right,
Bye.
you too. Bum, 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 bum.
A huge thank you to Jasper again for being on the show. I really enjoyed that one. And I hope that he mounts his massive camera to an Austin. I think that would be fantastic. If you enjoyed that and don't want to miss the episode where I go and record with Jasper, don't forget that you can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. So that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, all the usual places. And sign up for updates at primelensespodcast.com/sign-up. There's a link to it in the show notes. There's a weekly newsletter that goes out on a Wednesday. You can subscribe to the Patreon and help to support the show financially. That'll keep me ticking along. And also just share it with a friend. If you like the show, please tell someone and help me grow the show in a nice, organic and friendly way and bring lovely folks in. Right, I think that'll do it for this week. Have a tremendous week yourself, and we'll see you next time.